Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to On Texas Football. The video is titled Coaching Chaos, and coaching chaos indeed, guys. I mean, just a bomb out of nowhere. Alabama head coach Nick Saban announcing that he's stepping down and retiring. Bo Davis, of course, to LSU. What do y'all make of this?
I gotta say this: Bo Davis was a bomb for me. Nick Saban is an earthquake. he like shook the entire college football coastline, in my opinion. Big news out of Alabama today, Tuscaloosa. Chris Lowe first reporting that Nick Saban stepping down. The GOAT, the greatest of all time ever to do it in college football, most likely, is Nick Saban. Finishes with 6 national championships at Alabama, 1 at LSU, and literally he dominated college football for the better part of 15 years now, basically. He was in the national championship hunt almost every year, 11 SEC championships, just a phenomenal coaching career. Of course, I got to say this now: who replaces him? Does Steve Sarkisian's name get mentioned in that list? You just don't know. Some people have already put out some names. Dabo Swinney, of course, is an Alabama graduate. He's at Clemson. He's going to get mentioned. Kalen DeBoer is going to get mentioned. But I tell you what, Kalen DeBoer may not get mentioned for the Alabama job much because guess what? Pete Carroll got fired or let go today, or the Seattle Seahawks. So he's got that Pacific Northwest to tie. Maybe he stays and coaches the Seahawks. I don't know. The other piece that I've got to say that's very interesting here for me is this. I mean, Steve Sarkisian has his 2 mentors I quit coaching in the single day, right? Pete Carroll and Nick Saban. Just crazy right now to think about it. Earlier in the day, Bo Davis, the Texas defensive line coach, after saying he was going to stay or telling folks internally he was going to stay just a week and a half ago, decided to instead go ahead and go to LSU. But now this is the kind of atomic bomb that could go off that could change everything in college football. Alabama players now have 30 days to transfer if they want to. I mean, they could literally just go and go. And whoever's team the coach goes from can also portal as well. So it's a crazy situation right now for college football. Of course, he has all those midterm enrollees that are set to enroll this week too. CJ, I'm gonna pitch it to you. You've done a little research on Nick Saban by the numbers, and it's just so impressive.
It truly is. I mean, over 17 years at Alabama, 44 first-round draft picks, 6 national championships. I mean, just everything that you wanted in an encapsulation of a head coach at a major Division I program. That's what Nick Saban was. I'm looking at it right now. His entire career: 297, 71-1, 80% winning percentage as a head coach. 11 SEC titles, 5-time SEC Coach of the Year, 2-time AP Coach of the Year, and 2-time Walter Camp Coach of the Year as well. The accolade list could go on and on and on. 49 career first-round picks as well, 44 of which came at Alabama, as I mentioned. But what an astounding career in general. And Bobby, here's the craziest thing. I was looking at the Alabama records by year. Their worst record came in 2010. They went 10-3, finished 10th in the AP final AP poll of a season. They did not finish outside of the top 10 in an AP poll in Saban's entire tenure at Alabama, aside from year 1. That is remarkable. That is, as you said, truly the greatest coach of all time in college football. For my entire college football existing career, fandom, watching, whatever you want to call it, he's been that guy. He's been the gold standard. And I mean, it's one of those moments where you'll look back and say, all right, I remember where Nick Saban was when he retired, because it changed the entire landscape of the sport. You know, you'll see that with Bill Belichick's, eventually coming down from New England as well. When Brady left, it was kind of that same thing. Right now, this is the changing of the guard, the changing of a new generation in college football.
I'm looking at it, and it's absolutely incredible because here's another thing to consider. You mentioned guys that over the years have had great careers. Bobby Bowden had a run of 14 consecutive years being in the top 4 of the final AP poll. Bobby Bowden didn't win 6 national championships along the way. There are so many things that could be possibilities here. Whether or not, people are saying, "Oh, well, now Sark should go get Freddie Roach as the defensive line coach." That's Alabama's defensive line coach. He's an ace recruiter. That's possible. We don't know who's going to replace who's going to replace Nick Saban. Will Steve Sarkisian be in that group? Are they going to go for someone else? I mean, look, there's going to be a 24 to 48 hour reset here of a lot of expectations, and I really don't know which way this is going to go. Sark has got a contract that's up. He's probably attainable based on his current contract deal. But, you have guys like Kalen DeBoer that are out there that have had a tremendous season. Look, Mike Norvell at Florida State has to be a guy that's looked at a little bit. He had a great year for the Seminoles as well. But Sark has some experience in Tuscaloosa, just like Lane Kiffin does. But I would have a hard time seeing Kiffin follow Saban in Tuscaloosa. I wouldn't have a hard time seeing them going after someone like Steve Sarkisian, who's coming off his best coaching year ever.
And that was actually going to be something I brought up. I mean, if you're a top tier candidate, do you want to follow possibly the greatest coach of all time? I mean, that has to be something that weighs in the back of a coach's mind. Don't y'all think?
To an extent, but I also think how fertile Alabama's proven to be recruiting wise. The reputation that Alabama has as a national program, you talk about the blue bloods, the history of winning, the success. There's an expectation at Alabama that we've talked about that was instilled under Nick Saban that is about winning. Players want to go to Alabama to win. They want to go there to develop. That's what it was. They were able to recruit nationally so well as a result. So while, following the footsteps of a Nick Saban is going to be difficult, you're going into a program where everything has been instilled about winning for the last 20 years. It's almost one of the best jobs in the entire country based solely off of what Nick Saban did. It'll open up that many opportunities recruiting-wise and on the field-wise as a result of what he did, not necessarily as I wouldn't necessarily look at it as an escape of his shadow, but more a continuation of the work that he's done.
I feel like there's all kinds of things that I don't know that I would want to follow him, but there's probably going to be 10 to 12 million reasons why someone would. Let's per year. And so this is all kind of crazy. What does this do to Ryan Williams' recruitment? The wide receiver that's committed to Alabama right now, a young man out of Saraland High School. Auburn's involved there too, Brandon. You don't know, but you have to think that his commitment to Alabama is certainly tenuous at best. Even though he's expected to visit there this weekend. Maybe he was going there this weekend or next weekend. It's crazy right now. People are mentioning other guys that Texas could possibly get out of the portal, like Amar Niblack, the tight end out of Alabama. These are all too soon to tell. I've got to figure out, who else are some of the true candidates, in y'all's opinion, to take this job? I mean, James Franklin's been mentioned. Dan Lanning, of course, at Oregon. Mike Norvell. Marcus Freeman at Notre Dame. Dabo Swinney. I mean, goodness gracious. I mean, this is a crazy situation right now.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it, guys. I mean, it's just insane. And who knows what other coaching hires are going to take place. I mean, there's even rumors of Kirby Smart possibly making the jump to the NFL. I mean, there's so many possible things that can happen, plus what's already happened and set in stone just today. As you said, Pete Carroll, another deal. I mean, all this stuff is just crazy how much news is dropping today, and no telling what we're going to see here in the future.
Look, this is the new world of college football too. Their situations impact player in the portal. There is just absolutely no question about that. And what it means, I don't know. And someone's mentioning Urban Meyer at Alabama. Holy cow. I mean, talk about bringing it back. My point here is this. Texas has to figure out where it fits right now. The Longhorns absolutely want to keep Steve Sarkisian right now. Will Alabama come after him? And if they do, is Texas ready for that scenario? That's going to be the question that you have. Chris Del Conte has to be ready. Kevin Eltife and Jay Hartzell, they have to be ready. This is a scenario where it could get kind of interesting for Texas. I'm if I were Alabama, would I want to talk to Steve Sarkisian potentially? Yeah, the answer is yes. Right? Will they? I don't know. I mean, I think I something about it tells me Dabo Swinney is the guy there because he was from. I mean, that's his school. But we'll see where that goes. I will say that Alabama made a deal with Jimmy Sexton to get Nick Saban in the first place. That was Nick Saban's agent, Steve Sarkisian, as well as basically 75% of college football coaches are represented by Jimmy Sexton. So it's a crazy situation.
On a quick note on Dabo Swinney, I was looking at on Twitter, fifth quarter Clemson affiliated news outlet over on Twitter tweeted, Dabo has a $60 million buyout, but there's a clause in that buyout in which it's a 1.5 multiplier should he end up at Alabama. So that would be a $90 million buyout in the sense that he goes to Alabama from the Clemson job. So
90 million or 9 million? Which one, CJ?
90. 1.5 million multiplier right there.
Woo! That is crazy.
Jeez.
Oh my goodness.
Those
are crazy. Crazy buyouts. I mean, Alabama's going to have to pony up if they want one of those guys. Hey, Mike Vrabel of the NFL is available. I mean, this is crazy. They could go with Dan Quinn of the Cowboys. I mean, I know Quinn may take the Seattle job. He was the defensive coordinator there for Pete Carroll there for a little bit. Right, let's add Rod Babers in here. Rod, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, what's up, fellas?
Doing good,
Big
man.
news.
Everything okay today?
Everything's going great, man. It just feels like the off season doesn't feel like an off season. Feels like it's headlines constantly. It's a good thing, man. It's a good thing.
All right, Rob, what do you think of this move by Nick Saban retiring? And then also, let's talk a little bit about Bo Davis and his move to LSU earlier today.
Yeah, I mean, the possibility of not only Alabama being open, but, you look on the macro of Jim Harbaugh possibly leaving Michigan. I mean, you're talking about jobs that just don't come open around the same time. The domino effect, the butterfly effect of this thing could just be, it could be immense, right? It could be felt all shockwaves, felt all throughout college football. And yes, Texas somehow will feel those shockwaves too, whether it be you having to play Bama coming up next season, having to play Michigan coming up next season, or whether that be because, hey, man, Sark's due for a new contract. And I'm sure you guys already talked about it. I'm sure Sark's agent is salivating. He's like, excellent. Like Montgomery Burns, man. He's really excited about the possibility of being able to negotiate. Sark about to get paid. You're right about that, Chris. Negotiate against Alabama, which I'm sure on their short list, you're going to have Sark, and Sark deserves that. And, Nick Saban and apparently some of the decision makers there at Alabama were really, really high on Sark when he was there. There was even some talk about, when he was there, hey, if Nick Saban does actually move on, could Sark be one of those guys potentially that could replace him? So I don't think Sark's leaving Texas, so I'm not trying to freak people out at all. But he's smart and his agent is smart, so he will use this in his negotiation to get paid. There's no doubt about it. But Bo Davis leaving is probably, we talked about it, right? Money was not going to be a deciding factor for Bo Davis. And I know that LSU offered to pay big bucks, so they topped the offer from Texas allegedly, and that's a big move to be able to beat Texas, to money whip someone over Texas. That's quite an accomplishment. But I think Bo Davis, there was some sentimental ties, right? That's his alma mater. I think he wanted to go back there at LSU at one point. He was a strength and conditioning coach at one point. I think he wanted to go back there and coach the D-line. And let's talk that his son could be a big part of his decision, that maybe he does want to coach his son, and that's a possibility at LSU. There are a lot of other reasons other than just the money, but the money helps. And LSU going that big time, what was it, between $1.3, $1.5 million? That's a lot of money.
My understanding, Rod, they're also helping with a buyout, a little bit of a buyout.
Okay. Yeah,
so
that's a lot of bread. Yeah,
yeah, they're going overboard on this. And I think ultimately Bo, like you said, may wanted to go back to his alma mater, because Texas could have paid up. I just don't think that, ultimately these guys have to make decisions where they want to be, et cetera. Bo going to LSU is Bo going to LSU. Texas, in my opinion, now has to take this, Rod, and look at it as an opportunity to improve their coaching staff. So what were Bo's strengths and what were Bo's weaknesses? What were they? I'm not on that staff. I don't have the day in, day out, but I'm sure Steve Sarkisian does. He's going to have to go out there and try to find people that can do it better. That's his job as head coach. That is a tough task. Find a coach better than Bo Davis or as good. Yeah, no, I agree. My point being, Bo Davis isn't the greatest defensive line coach of all time. He's really good. Don't get me wrong. But there are guys out there that can coach defensive line that are doing it at a very high level.
Yes.
Texas needs to find one of those guys that can also recruit, that it can also jive with the staff, all of those things mixed together, right? That they have to look at it as an opportunity. Some people are mentioning names like Rod Wright, who's an NFL offensive line coach, guys like Frank Oakham, guys like that. But I suspect Oscar Giles was that, former Longhorn and defensive line coach this year up at Wyoming. There are a lot of them. I don't know, though, that this is going to be a position where Sark just goes and hires in-house. So that's my take on it. He's going to look for the best proven recruiter and coach he can find, D-line coach.
What's Ed Orgeron doing? Is Ed Orgeron doing?
It's my understanding Ed Orgeron, I mentioned him. Ed Orgeron has, in the previous video, Ed Orgeron has a buyout if he's working for any SEC team. The problem is Texas isn't currently an SEC team. And Sark and Ed Orgeron work together at USC. So we'll see. Oh. Ed Orgeron is about as good as it gets, too. He's an awfully good defensive line coach and recruiter. That's a great name, Rod.
Okay, I like that. I didn't realize that's a great little loophole there. So they officially are in the SEC and win July?
Yes.
Ooh, that's nice. That's a
we'll see if it actually happens. Look, there are a lot of nuances. This is going to get crazy. Every time I thought we were every time I thought things would slow down. Look, I thought that Bo Davis was big news today. And then I get a text saying Nick Saban retired. And I'm like, okay, wait a minute. Who's reporting this? And then it just, oh man.
Yeah.
What a crazy situation.
And then think about, I wonder if they don't, if they don't fill the job, obviously whatever, to fill the position quickly. The transfer portal, right? The rules change for the coaching vacancies too.
Yep.
Oh man. The poaching season also is going to be interesting to see if some of these really high-end players for Alabama, if they were Nick Saban guys or if they were Alabama guys.
Yep. And Syracuse Horn has this right. There are going to be 100 dominoes that fall from this.
Oh, yeah.
I think one of them is that people are asking who Alabama's defensive line coach. That is Freddie Roach. And he is an excellent recruiter and would be someone that Sark would likely look at, to be fair. And so we'll see what comes to pass there. But we're following it right now. Just a breaking story. Nick Saban retires from college football coaching. CJ, read those stats back to Rod and let Rod talk about those stats that you had up there. Matt, put that graphic back up for us too, if you would.
3 wins shy of 300 career victories for Nick Saban, 7 national championships, 6 of which came at Alabama, 11 SEC titles, 5 SEC coaches of the year, 2-time AP coach of the year, 2-time Walter Camp coach of the year, 44 first-round picks at Alabama alone, 49 of which he had in his entire career. 4 Heisman winners as well were coached by Nick Saban as well. Wow. So just an absolutely incredible, run, tenure, just the
GOAT.
The best there ever was.
Yep, GOAT stuff, man. He's a GOAT. And honestly, he's one of those GOATs where I'm not sure when some coach is going to get on that kind of trajectory to be able to surpass it. And honestly, I'm not sure if it'll ever happen again because of, I don't know, really the dominant run that he had at Alabama. I don't know if teams are equipped to have those kind of dominant runs. We'll see. I mean, Kirby Smart's, he's on a pace, right? Kirby Smart's on a nice pace. We'll see how Kirby Smart does with reinventing the program now. But yeah, I mean, I don't foresee anybody actually surpassing those numbers by Nick Saban, maybe ever, or if not for a really long time.
Hey, Bobby, we've had a lot of people join since we first started this, and we're getting this question a lot. But can you reiterate, what are the transfer rules with a coach leaving?
Okay, head coaches only, first of all. The portal opens immediately for those players, the entire team, for 30 days. So Alabama players have until what? February 10th to leave at free will. They can transfer. Right now, every single player on Alabama's roster can enter the transfer portal, contact other schools, etc. I think that Alabama has a good enough roster and enough players that I don't see a bunch of guys entering it immediately. But what about a Jalen Hale, who last year went to Alabama over Texas at the last minute, right? What about guys like that have some ties back to Texas? Jamarian Miller. I think that they're going to wait and see what happens at Alabama, but there could be 5 to 10 that peel off quickly because they went there specifically for Nick Saban or one of the coordinators, to be honest.
Yeah.
That's another thing. You see here, this is an interesting one right here, Rod. Steve Sarkisian had 2 mentors in his football, 2 true mentors in his college football coaching career. Nick Saban was one of them at Alabama. The other was Pete Carroll, who probably had a more formative impact on him. Both of those no longer coaching as of today. Both happening in a single day. How's that? I wonder what Steve Sarkisian's thinking about right now.
Yeah. And aren't they? They're close to the same age, are they not?
Yes.
They're very close to the same age, around that age too. I think a lot of people were surprised that Pete Carroll was let go today too. I think for Sark to have they're very different, right? Pete Carroll and Nick Saban, even personality wise, very, very different. I think if you go look at it, maybe from a team building perspective, like just from team building, roster construction, I think he takes a little bit from both. Right, took a little bit from Pete Carroll in the way that he constructed the USC roster. I mean, look at the offensive talent, stockpiling of the quarterbacks, but I also think he took something from Nick Saban, like the lines of scrimmage and building teams. So he did take a little bit from both of those guys in his philosophy overall as a coach, and he's talked about how much those guys meant to him. Be interesting to see if either of those guys are done, or if you'll see Nick Saban in some other capacity. Maybe he's been complaining about college football for a long time. Maybe he wants to be the commissioner.
I think Lee Corso probably needs to worry about his job at this point.
Oh, now that's a good, yeah, no doubt, especially with Pete Carroll or Nick Saban. Hell yeah, you're right about that. No doubt.
Yeah. Hey, CJ, read that tweet, if you would, that Sark put out, because I thought that was tremendous from him.
Yeah, the 2 GOATs. Let's see. There it is. The 2 GOATs would not be here where I am without these 2 men today as mentors. Thank you for everything.
And that's from Steve Sarkisian.
Yeah. Pete Carroll's got to go to Pete Carroll's GOAT legacy on his resume is he won a national title and won a Super Bowl, right? You have 3 coaches all time that have done that. Pete Carroll is one of those guys. Barry Switzer's the other one. And Jimmy Johnson. I think Jimmy Johnson and Pete Carroll get more props than Barry Switzer. thing was on cruise control pretty much, but those guys built it right from the ground up. So, college or the pro level, that makes you a made man. Jim Harbaugh's going to try to do it next and be a made man. So that's why people's like, well, how is Pete Carroll a GOAT? That's why he's a GOAT. You can win a championship at the NFL level and the college level. They're basically two different games at this point, two different sports at this point. You just know ball, and Pete Carroll know ball. And so obviously Nick Saban's a GOAT, but that's why Pete Carroll stands out.
A lot of people agreeing with you that Barry Switzer should not count, by the way. His college championships are tainted as are his NFL championships, in my opinion. Although not at least the ones in pro were legal. All right, Matt Miller says everyone needs to calm down. Thamel is plugged in, and Sark isn't on the list. On top of that, he was offered coaching waiting at Alabama and chose Texas. Yeah. Thamel is indeed plugged in. Coaching searches have a way of changing things fairly quickly. Can we go back to that list of buyouts that we had earlier, Matt, when you see that? The one that is interesting really to me at this point is Dan Lanning. Oregon is not – it has been a way station for just about every coach that goes through there. They never stay.
Wow.
Even Chip Kelly, or if you have any amount of success there, you're on your way elsewhere. This is Pete Thamel's list. Dan Lanning, that's at Oregon. Kalen DeBoer at Washington. Dabo Swinney. James Franklin up at Penn State. Mike Norvell at Florida State. And Marcus Freeman at Notre Dame. All come with complications and big buyouts as it's difficult to move entrenched coaches. Lord, what a big tweet that is. Nick Saban is retiring. Sources tell ESPN. He won 6 national titles. CJ, how many NFL draft picks did the guy have?
Let me find that number. I know 49 total were in the first round, but 44 came of which at Alabama. Since 2007, I think his first actually came in 2009. So from 2009 to 2023, 44 first-round draft picks at Alabama in its entirety. But let me find that number for you.
Texas has not had that many people drafted in the last decade. They've had 44 first rounders. You want to wonder why it's the Jimmies and Joes and not the X's and O's?
That's why. That is why. You're right about that. And I love that, the irony of, Texas was there at the beginning of this run, right? Texas was right there. The start. Sorry, I hate to bring this stuff up. I know it's hurtful, but we witnessed the beginning of it. And what I love about Nick Saban's run, because you can't have a run that long. It's like the Patriots or it's like the Spurs. You can't have a dynastic run that long unless you reinvent yourself a couple of times. You have to. Because after a while, everybody's going to catch up to your secrets and your trends, and they'll poach all your coaches, and they'll find out your philosophy and all that kind of stuff. And then you lose your edge, you lose your advantage. And Nick Saban, remember, they used to win national titles and compete for them with quarterbacks, completing less than 60% of their passes. These quarterbacks that, they weren't prolific passers. They weren't necessarily, they were more game managers. And yet then he flipped the script, reinvented the whole entire blueprint for Alabama. And then they were putting out first-round wide receivers and first-round quarterbacks and running up-tempo offenses. I just love that, he was able to reinvent himself. And I think there's a lot of great – you see a dynasty, and they were dynasty for more than 5-6 years. There's a reinvention in there somewhere. And to me, that's really shows you the brilliance of one Nick Saban. He almost tried to warn us. He was like, I don't want to play this style of football. I don't want to go here. He was against up-tempo offenses. He didn't really want to go to the spread, but he was like, hey, you know what? Sign the times. I must evolve. And damn it, if he did it, he did it the best that anybody did it.
Yeah, he's just tremendous. Go ahead, CJ.
123 total draft picks at Alabama under Nick Saban. Damn. And I saw it on Twitter in a different fashion. How about 44 first-round draft picks to just 29 total losses? Doesn't that make you think, huh? That's crazy.
He's the GOAT for a reason. There's no doubt about that. Matt, can you put that buyout stat back up on the thing from Pete Thamel? This is interesting, CJ and Rod, because it defies what some Clemson folks are putting out. Buyouts for potential Alabama head coaching contacts. It says Dan Lanning at $20 million, Kalen DeBoer at $12 million, Dabo Swinney only at $7.5 million. CJ, compared to the 60 that the Clemson side is quoting. I wonder where Pete Thamel is getting that number from. James Franklin at $6 million, Mike Norvell at $4 million. I believe Steve Sarkisian is either at 12 or 15 million. I don't know exactly that number. Somebody would have to help me out with that right now. But my point being that if Dabo Swinney's only 7.5 compared to what we thought it was at 60, that's a big gap. That's a big change, especially for a guy that graduated from Alabama, played for Bear Bryant, et cetera.
Yeah, that is impressive. I guess it goes to your point, though, Bobby, about Oregon tired of their coaches using them pretty much as a stepping stone and leaving. So they're like, no, if you're going to leave, it's going to be a ridiculous buyout. And 20 million that's crazy.
That's just huge. Guys, Rod, we talked about Bo Davis leaving. I want to hit on that a little bit. You feel like it was partially, I know part of it had to do with money. There's no doubt about it. LSU was told no last week and came back again this week. That's what I've been told. And so I know part of that is money. Part of it may be a tie to a relative, his son that wants to play as a grad transfer there. Is that what you've heard as well?
Yeah, I've heard that as well. That is something I've seen multiple times. And I don't know if his son is transferred already or if he could transfer or will transfer. But that has been a report that, it may be more rumor than reports that he also would like to coach his son.
Got it. CJ, what do you think that does? I mean, we reached out to Alex January, DeAndre Robinson, and Melvin Hills at this point. Those are the 3 defensive line signees for the University of Texas. 2 of those 3, Robinson and January, expected to be on Texas campus in the next week. What are your thoughts on what this means for Texas and those players?
Well, it's tough because obviously, you commit to Bo Davis. You see the production and the development that his defensive linemen have put on the field over the last 3 years. That's kind of what you signed up for. You wanted to play for Steve Sarkisian in the University of Texas, but above all, you wanted to be coached by Bo Davis because of what he was able to do, getting these guys into the NFL, driving up their draft stock as a result of tremendous on-field performance and development as well. So it puts the ball in Steve Sarkisian's court right now to go find a guy who can follow suit, that can, establish relationships and obviously develop these guys on the field. That's the biggest question. Also, you named those 3 guys that Texas signed in the 2024 class. What does this mean for Alfred Collins, who said he's going to come back for 2024 as well? What does it mean for Jamari Caldwell, who is in the portal right now from Houston, that Texas has also been courting and recruiting as hard as anybody since his name went into the portal? Is that the reason for the holdup? Was that something that was kind of portrayed to him beforehand? I don't know, but that's something that's going to have to give these guys a couple of second thoughts to ensure that they want to come to Texas once more. And again, like I said, it's up for Steve Sarkisian to find a suitable replacement that can step in with a seamless transition to continue the on-field production and relationships in that room to keep it a strength on the Texas defense.
I agree with you about Jamari Caldwell. I think this may be the reason why Texas was on the cusp of a commitment 24, 48 hours ago, and now we're kind of saying, what's going on?
Right.
Maybe this is what was in the works behind the scenes that didn't push the trigger or pull the trigger on Jamari Caldwell. I want to mention this too, and this is Mock Schnell is a guy that posts quite a bit, really intelligent poster. Rick Amber guy says, Mock has a good point. Bo did not recruit DeAndre Coburn, Mora Ojomo, Tavondre Sweat, or Alfred Collins. None of them. Oscar Giles did. I will say this, the defensive line room at Texas outside of Sadir Mitchell right now is not littered with blue chip players that Bo Davis recruited. Now, did he develop those guys? Heck yeah. This was probably his best defensive line recruiting group, though, since he's been on campus at Texas. Yep. So that's one of the reasons why Jamari Caldwell remains so important for the Longhorns. Kirk Bowl says, Bo Davis desperately wants to coach his son, Bo, and I bet the Southeastern Louisiana lineman transfers to LSU. That was the critical issue for Bo. Okay. A week ago, that wasn't the case. So I get that, and I understand that. There's compounding factors here. I think that's the best way to put that. Maybe he wouldn't have been able to found out he wouldn't have been able to have his son at Texas either. That's a possibility.
That's a good point.
All right, guys, we got a couple of super chats that we need to jump over to real quick, and we're going to go back to Saban for a second. This first one from Thunderpup. He says, NIL, not Texas, broke Saban. Washington's DeBoer has a winning record that's hard to miss.
He's won everywhere he's went, Rod.
Yep.
I mean, DeBoer he's a stud. I don't think he's
Quickly, too.
What's
That's
that?
a good point.
He's done it quickly. He's turned around programs that weren't necessarily at top of their conference or in contention to be on a national fish, or relative to their division. So credit to DeBoer. He's been tremendous.
And a coach that's proven he can do more with less. I mean, he's, like you said, there's no 5 stars on that Washington team, guys. They got more 3 stars, and Texas has 4 stars. I mean, that's pretty impressive what they did to get to a title game.
Let's see. It takes a certain type of coach, though, guys, to do more with more.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's the question there. Can Kalen DeBoer do more with more? Because they're going to want more at Alabama.
Amen.
And CJ said this, Rod. They haven't finished outside the top 10 since Nick Saban joined the Crimson Tide. After his first year, was that right, CJ?
That first title run?
After year 1, he was a top 10.
After year 1, they finished in the top 10 every year in 6 national championships.
That's unbelievable.
Just crazy.
Yeah.
Now, what happens? What is the fallout from all of this? Hugh Freeze has to be smiling. The Auburn head coach, he woke up and he just got carte blanche in the state of Alabama.
They're actually toilet papering Toomer's Corner right now in Auburn. Like, seriously, they are out there celebrating his retirement. I mean, it's a full-on party in Auburn right now.
The king is dead, huh? The king is
That's
dead.
why I love college football. That's great. That's awesome.
Texas didn't do that when Jimbo Fisher got fired. Why?
There you go. There's a picture of it.
Wow. That's unbelievable.
That's respect when your hated rival that's usually a custom for something big happening on your own campus. Your own rival toilet papers the Toomer's Corner. That's awesome.
It's pretty
That's
big.
awesome. That's respect right there, guys. That's hilarious.
All right, guys, we're going to jump back over to Bo Davis for a second. That conversation. Hook 'em Casino says, are there any NFL D-line coaches that could be a real option for the Longhorns?
Good question.
That's a great question. I mean, a guy that used to be one of the best recruiters in college football was a guy named Ryan Nielsen. He's currently the defensive coordinator for the Atlanta Falcons, which, is he still Arthur Smith got let go, right?
Yeah, he did. Yep.
Ryan Nielsen was one of the best D-line coaches in college football. I think he had, in 3 years, he recruited 6 defensive linemen at NC State that got drafted.
Wow.
And he's from USC originally, played college ball at USC. I'm sure he's got from 97 to 2001. So I know he knows Sark somewhat. That might be a name to watch. But would he go from being a defensive coordinator in the NFL to a defensive line coach at Texas?
That's the real question.
Yeah, that's a question mark that has to be answered because he's been seemingly on a fast track in the NFL. But there are a number of elite defensive line coaches in the NFL. That's where Sark found Bo Davis.
Yeah, Bo Davis got NFL ties. He was an NFL guy one time. Yeah, you're starting to see it. Listen, even Michigan, right? Michigan fixed their defense with NFL guys. Jim went to his brother John. Is like, hey man, I need a defensive mind, and essentially John loaned him Mike McDonald, who ends up as one of the best defensive coordinators in the NFL for the Ravens now. But he initially went to Michigan, fixed the defense, and now they got, was it Jesse Minter? It was another NFL guy who came there. Now he's the actual defensive coordinator. So you're starting to see more and more teams look to the NFL. They may not get a coordinator from the league because that's a kind of a big drop for an NFL coordinator, but get a position coach who aspires to be a coordinator. And that seems to be, I think, a route that a lot of these young position coaches who want to be coordinators, they'll take that circuitous route through college and then get back up to the league like you saw McDonald do for the Ravens.
Wow. How about this? Most wins that Matt, our producer, gave me this stat just now. Most wins versus AP top 10, Matt, or top 25 opponents since 1936. Nick Saban with 104 ranked opponent wins. 104. Joe Paterno second with 86. Bobby Bowden third with 82. Wow. Bear Bryant fourth with 65. That's we talk about, hey, did you have any ranked wins this year? And you have like 3 or 4. I mean, Nick Saban rolled those things up like a lucky strike. I mean, he killed it, man. I get all this stuff about going to the NFL for a possible replacement for Bo Davis. I'm going to guess that Steve Sarkisian is going to be able to find a defensive line coach that he likes. It's possible, whether it's somebody like Freddie Roach at Alabama or one of these guys like Ryan Nielsen that comes available because of their personal situations. But any way you go here, there's going to be valuable defensive line coaches out there.
Yep.
And then we have a super chat here from Lane Seawright. And Lane says, what is the top of the market for head coaching salaries? 10 million, 20 million, or higher?
I think Saban was right around the top at like 13, maybe. I'd have to check, but I don't think anybody's eclipsed 15. I could be wrong there.
What will Bill Belichick makes? Bill Belichick made the most in Sean Payton, right?
Yeah, right up there.
Now, not college, but pro.
Yes, all of them. Yeah.
I wonder. I mean, Payton at 18, Greg Popovich with the Spurs at 16, Pete Carroll was 15, Sean McVay 15, Rod, your friend Kyle Shanahan at 14, John Harbaugh at 12, Nick Saban at 11.8. This was as of November 28th, according to Sportico.
Damn, he's underpaid, wasn't he?
What's that?
He was underpaid.
I mean, look at Bill Belichick's salary, though. Whew.
Yeah, Belichick is classified as essentially the GM and the head coach, so he's got a lot of responsibilities and titles. Yeah, but they might be ready to move on from Bill Belichick too, though. Honestly, but yeah, that's about to happen too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey guys, they're actually reporting that Nick Saban was interviewing assistant coaches within the last 24 hours for Alabama. Whoa. So that's kind of crazy that then he then announces his retirement. It makes you kind of wonder what went on behind the scenes to set these wheels in motion.
Yeah, who was that coach that drove him to retirement with a bad interview? That's what I'm wondering now. That's crazy. That's really out of nowhere.
That is. I wonder. See, that makes me think something happened, something abrupt, right? I mean, I don't know. That's weird. That means he wasn't necessarily pondering it, while leading up to that announcement that something happened that triggered him. That's what that would imply. He was triggered to do it. And that's weird. That's weird. That's a big decision.
I don't think he was triggered. I mean, look, Holman Wiggins was left. Kevin Steele retired. He had some guys that he was gonna replace. I think he just finally made his final decision. I have a hard time believing there was anything else, unless we could wake up and see something different. Jerry Hamilton would like to tell us, don't forget about that $19 million house he bought in Jupiter, Florida, right now, because Jerry's all about Jupiter, Florida. He said, look, he bought a $19 million house down there. I was talking to Jerry a couple months ago, and he was talking about, I bet Saban retires because, man, you don't buy a $19 million house unless you're going to go live there and retire.
That's
Maybe
fair.
that came to pass.
That's fair. It's a good point. Yeah.
Y'all. Well, A lot of Longhorn fans nervous, worried about Sark leaving. David Parcell says, my nervous level is about 20% for Sark leaving. I'm going to put y'all on the spot. What's your nervous level at? We'll start at the top with Rod.
10 to 15%. I'm not that worried about it. I think if Texas, if they get into a negotiation and kind of a bidding war for Sark, I trust our BMDs, the big money donors, to win that bidding war. So I'm not that concerned with it.
Well,
Bobby?
I would be more than 20%. I'm not saying that it's a 20% chance he gets the job or even gets offered the job. I think that Texas brass needs to be on call right now and on alert. Does that mean that doesn't mean 20% worry for me? That just means on alert. It's not so much a percentage. I'm not saying there's a 20% chance Steve Sarkisian gets the Texas job. That's not it at all. Don't go misquote me there. I just think you've got to be on alert,
And CJ.
Yeah, I'd probably sit right around 15% like Rod. Unfortunately, I share a different perspective about the BMDs because they kind of got their lunch handed to them today by LSU. So if that wasn't a wake-up call, I don't know what is. If they do come knocking for Sarkisian's door, I'm going to look at it like it was a lesson learned, and they're not going to let it happen again to them. And they'll take care of their guy inside the house.
All right, Joe, we have another super chat. This one from David Duke. And David said, he's glad to find on Texas football. David, we're glad you found us.
Thank you, brother. Very kind
of you. And then super chat from Sean. And Sean says, is Isaiah Bond going to jump in the portal?
He almost did last week. Now what happens? Is Alabama is wide receivers coach just went to A&M, right? He's from Georgia originally, I believe. We'll see. I mean, this is going to be crazy. I mean, one of the things, the subtext or subplot is, what does this do to Alabama's roster? It is one of the 2 or 3 best rosters in the country. What does this do to Alabama's recruiting class? The number 2 recruiting class, I think, in the country.
Yeah.
Think about that. I mean, all those guys are free to roam.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, already have odds.
Wow.
You
can gamble on anything.
Sarkisian on that list.
Is he down low? Is he deep down there? Are they not on the list at all? Did they not make it? That's good.
Not listed at all, according to Matt, our producer.
That's why. Hey, like I said, 10 to 15%. I ain't worried about it, man. And if the BMDs did get there, they got their butts handed to them in this Bo Davis thing, they're prideful. I know some of these dudes. They ain't gonna lose another one. They ain't gonna lose 2 bidding wars to SEC teams. I guarantee you that. So yeah, I feel confident but what I do feel confident of is the holy trinity behind the scenes. You're Kevin Eltife, you're Jay Hartzell, CDC. I got a lot of trust in that group. They've made some really good decisions while on campus in terms of hiring and the culture. And I think they're gonna, as Bobby said, these guys are on high alert now. They're on high alert. They're going to make sure they roll out the red carpet for Sark and make sure that when Sark is comparing in his mind, I wonder how this is at Alabama, or how this was at Alabama when I was there. They want him to, when he's making that comparison, always pick, Texas has it better. Texas has the advantage there. I'd rather be at Texas in that situation. So I feel confident. I probably shouldn't, damn it. But I'm feeling confident about it.
Bobby, I wanted to ask you, on that list that we just saw, is there a name or a coach maybe not mentioned yet that you don't want going to Alabama because it could continue the machine that we've seen Alabama recruit and kind of perform at over the last 15 plus years?
That's a great question in some ways. I think that I don't know that Kalen DeBoer is a match for Alabama. I think he's a great coach. Don't get me wrong. From Sioux Falls to Seattle to Tuscaloosa, not many people have made that trek. In life, much less in college football. I feel like of that group, the one that I would worry about probably the most, being most Saban-ish as far as recruiting and relentless, is Dan Lanning.
Yeah. But
probably the best coach on that list is Mike Norvell. Him at Alabama in that offense that he has and the ability to throw the ball around. as well as get the defensive players, that could be different for him. I think that could be different for him. I'm not saying he would go there, etc. Not Jimbo, that's for sure. But the Dabo Sweeney is interesting too, because look, I don't think he hasn't had a great run the last 4 or 5 years, guys, or last 3 years, right? Ever since he lost Trevor Lawrence, he's been without a quarterback. Even Cade Klubnik, they had a good run at the end of the year, by the way. They seem to put some things in the right spot. But I don't know that Dabo is built like Nick in that he is. I mean, Nick was I don't know how to say this without saying it the wrong way, but he had some brass balls and mind making hard decisions, either during games, after games, in between. He ain't waiting a year to fire somebody.
Yeah.
He would fire him on the tarmac. He would replace him mid-season. He would do whatever it took that he thought would be. I don't know that all of those guys are cut from that same cloth. I really don't. I mean, he's rare. I mean, he's the GOAT. I mean, what do you like? Part of me says he's the next guy. It doesn't matter who you are, you're going to get fired, because there is no way you're living up to those expectations.
No,
it's good.
I mean, there's just no way.
That's a fair take. Yeah,
even as good as their roster is. I mean, the first time you lose to a team, can you imagine if Texas would have beat a team by 10 points in Bryant Denny this year that wasn't coached by Nick Saban? That guy may have been fired the next week. I mean, you know what I mean? Seriously.
Yeah. That's a good point.
Yeah. Hey, and I'm not saying the Vegas odds are always right, but it's worth noting that if you go back in the middle of the season, they put out who's going to be the first coach fired. Jimbo had the best odds on there. And it was, a week and a half later, he was fired. And that was the middle of the season. And everybody else say, no, it's going to be this, it's going to be that. And bam, I mean, they nailed it. They're right a lot more than they're wrong. So just something to keep an eye on there with that list that we just had up on the screen. Okay, guys, we have another super chat. To this one from Jason. And Jason says, L'Oreal ain't going from Austin to Tuscaloosa. The wifey wins this battle. Obviously, talking about Sark's wife.
That's a good one.
You're in agreement, I think.
Yeah, man. That she's a fashionista. Ain't no red carpets being rolled out there in Tuscaloosa, man. She got to go to South by Southwest, ACL, be seen. She looks good. She dressed good. So yeah, wifey definitely will have some influence. And a lot of people don't know, man. A lot of these decisions that are made, and you wonder, man, what flipped the odds in favor of this decision or the other? Wifey, one conversation. I don't want to be there, and the school sucked there. Done.
Oh man. All right. This next comment from Michael Sproul. He says, whoever they hire will be answering questions about Saban forever. I mean, that's true.
Unfair. It'll be unfair questions. Just like whoever followed Darryl Royal, whoever followed Mac Brown, they were all going to get those questions, guys. And some of them they didn't do themselves any favors on, to be honest. But a lot of it is just unfair expectations. How do you follow Bear Bryant? I mean, how many coaches did they go through before they got the right guy at Alabama? I mean, it's hard, man. It is going to be hard for whoever follows, because the first time they lose by 10 points, oh, well, Nick would have won that game.
Yep.
You know, and all of a sudden that one of those gets to be a money donor, and all of a sudden that starts to put pressure on when we're not building this building, and it could be a downward spiral that the football coach really could be a great football coach and have no control.
Yep. Good point.
And then Jack in the Box, he says, Bama is still a jewel in the college football crown. They'll be okay with the right coach, but there will be a slight drop-off in the natties. I'd probably say more than a slight. Texas will be okay, too.
Yeah, I mean, in retrospect, I'm happy that I went to the Texas-Alabama game this year. I really am, because I got to see Nick Saban coach in his own backyard. It's the first time I'd ever been to a Nick Saban coach game at Alabama. And so I feel like I feel like that's, as someone that loves college football like I do. Yes, I love the University of Texas as well. Don't get me wrong, but I'm a college football fan at heart too. And to have seen him do his work there, that's like, it's kind of like watching Nolan Ryan pitch a baseball on the mound.
Yeah, hey, breaking news here, guys. Ryan Williams, the 5-star, decommitted from Alabama. Hayes Fawcett of On3 obviously reporting that they're going to be visiting Texas here, about 3 weeks from now? Things are getting interesting.
Yep. That's no surprise. I mean, and I expect some other guys to reconsider their loyalty to Alabama, because we don't know how many of these guys went to Alabama because they loved Alabama and they love, the campus and the football program overall, or if they went because they wanted to play for the GOAT. And the GOAT has a hell of a sales pitch. I'm the GOAT. I've had 49 first-round draft picks. As CJ mentioned, I got more first-round draft picks than losses. You want to be? I think you're a good player. I think you're a first-round draft pick. Come play for me, and then I'll make you a first-round draft pick. Okay, done. You don't have that sales pitch anymore. You don't have that salesman anymore to be able to walk in there as the GOAT and be able to, with that credibility and that kind of street cred. Like I said, a lot of these guys came to play for Saban, period. There ain't no doubt about that. And I think you're seeing one right now. And by the way, I'm not blaming any of these guys, because he's Nick Saban. He's the GOAT. He can help you achieve your dreams of being the best college player and being the best NFL player. So I think a lot of these guys, loyalty to Bama, I think now you're going to see that, come into play here. And I don't necessarily think a lot of them have loyalty to the university or the program. It's about Saban, man. It's about Saban. It's always been about him.
I was going to ask you, who do you think's probably the happiest coach to hear this news? Is this is Kirby Smart now looking at the throne as his finally? Obviously, Hugh Freeze is looking at the state of Alabama. Like, I finally don't have to be behind the shadow as well. There's got to be a number of coaches out here looking at this like, I don't know, about time, really.
Yeah, I'm right.
Saban's 72 years old. I figured, some of these coaches would probably be dreaming about this day for quite a while now. So a lot going on. I also was kind of pondering the idea of, should these coaching carousel rumors continue and kind of the coaches that are linked to them following through with some of these jobs. If Jim Harbaugh does take an NFL job and Brian Kelly, follows up north to Michigan, or if, Kirby Smart is linked to that Atlanta Falcons job, who's kind of, that big dog in the SEC right now? Right now it is Kirby Smart. Mm-hmm. But if he, for whatever reason, ends up leaving, it's wide open. The best conference in all football is wide open right around the time that Texas is walking in the door. So something to think about. That's exciting.
Huge void. To your point, a huge void for whoever, right? A vacuum almost is what he leaves. I'm amazed by it, Rod. Your thoughts on, if Smart is the guy, Brian Kelly seems like he's most poised based on how he just won a Heisman Trophy with him at quarterback. Texas looks like they're on the up and up. A&M looks like they're kind of, trying not to fall apart. Oklahoma's on the up and up. What does the SEC look like, to y'all's point, not necessarily from a coaching perspective now, but from a power perspective? Is it moving even further westward other than Georgia? Because right now, Florida's on a downtrend for sure. I mean,
that's a great point. No, that's a great point. I agree with you. It's like, Bama has ruled the Iron Throne pretty much for a while, and then Georgia looks like they were going to be the next kind of king of the SEC. If Kirby Smart makes a move, ends up, leaving to go to the NFL to pursue another challenge, you could see a kind of a new shift in the landscape of the SEC. Hell, why can't Texas and Sark be that program? I mean, they recruit at the highest levels. Sark is ascending as a coach, right? Now coaching, his best brand of football. We assume he's only going to get better with that. I mean, why can't it be Texas? I think that really what the Longhorn fans are asking themselves going into the SEC, that if it's not Nick Saban, that's who you expected to do battle with. That was the standard you expected to try to live up to. Well, if it ain't Nick Saban, I mean, you ain't got to play him, and then you got Kirby Smart in there, and you ain't got him to worry about. Hell, man, Texas should be, as good a possibility as any team of taking over and being the new king of the SEC. I'll just throw it out there. I'm not saying they will be, but they have as good a shot as any program after Georgia and after Bama, of course.
Man.
Okay, guys, let's go to this next one here. And, we talked about Ryan Williams decommitting, but Texas had a commit that decommitted to go to Bama and Aaron Hampton. Does if he goes back, does Texas look at him again?
Man, I don't think so. They took Aaron Butler, right, CJ?
Yep. Yeah. Aaron Butler was kind of that, scoop around by Chris Jackson and Sarkisian to say we have a void, we want to fill it. If I'm Aaron Hampton right now, I'm probably feeling a little bit befuddled by this news today, because you were in a position to commit to Texas and sign with Texas the day of, and now things have kind of flipped on their heads a little bit. And this is for a lot of kids in that class as well. So it's not just Aaron Hampton who's kind of sitting around wondering, what's next? I'm supposed to move to Tuscaloosa in about 3 days and start my next chapter of my life. So a lot going on for a lot of these kids. Aaron Hampton specifically, one that could really start reevaluating things and potentially look to be released from that NLI.
They've got 26 commitments, Alabama does, CJ and Rod and Blake. 21 of them are early enrollees.
Wow.
21 of them, including, to your point, Aaron Hampton. But they've got one of the top handful of quarterbacks in the country, one of the top defensive backs, two of the top defensive backs. I mean, they rank number 2 overall for a reason. It is absolutely crazy for Texas right now, or for Alabama right now, to think about just the turmoil now that this puts your coaching. Retiring is so different than getting fired. Mm-hmm. Usually when a coach gets fired, players are like, okay, well, we need a win now. When a coach just retires, that's a different feeling. I mean, right? Because that means, wow, he doesn't want to be here anymore. Do I want to be here anymore? It's a different feeling for those players. Whereas getting fired, well, yeah, he didn't win. We didn't win. I'm part of that. So maybe I need to take some ownership. But when a guy retires, what ownership is there to take for those players?
Great point, Bobby. The choice was made, right? The coach made a choice that he'd rather be retired than, coach the team. So you're right about that. The guys think, all right, well, you know what would I rather be doing than be with this team? So I had never thought about it like that, but that's a great point. As opposed to getting fired, guys fight hard after a guy gets fired because that's a hit to their pride. Like, man, they got fired because of you. So I'm with you. I think a lot of these guys, like I said, we'll see how many of them are for. They came to play for Bama, or how many came to play for Saban. And I'm going to bet that a lot of these guys just came to play for Nick Saban, man. And that if you can entice them to come play for your program, whether it be because of the scheme or because of the culture or because they like the coach there or whatever, or because it's closer to home, whatever the reason, I think you're going to see some guys leave because you guys brought up this Aaron Hampton situation. There's a good chance if Nick Saban wasn't a part of the equation, they'd even like, well, I'm not going there. If Nick Saban's not there, Alabama doesn't have the same appeal. It's just not the same sales pitch at all.
10 of their 26 commitments, by the way, were from in-state.
Wow.
So only 10 of their 26 in there. Recruits cannot get out after they sign a letter, but they can enter the transfer portal. That's my understanding.
Okay.
CJ, you were going to say something? Sorry about that.
Yeah, I was just going to say on the topic of firing versus retiring, in most instances, the topic and conversation of letting a coach go has been up there for weeks on end, leading to a decision eventually coming. Most oftentimes, continuing a conversation behind the scenes of who that next guy will be. When a sudden abrupt retirement like Nick Saban comes, everybody's kind of blown off, kind of, whoa, what flashbang? Whoa, what just happened here? So for Alabama specifically, with, as you said, Bobby, 21 kids set to enroll on campus in the next couple of days, That's a big decision, and not necessarily one where Alabama has the luxury of sitting back and waiting on, despite needing to evaluate all options and possible routes that they can take to continue the tradition and success that they've had at Alabama.
Would Bill Belichick take that job if he gets fired from the Patriots?
I could never see him recruiting. No way.
Never.
That would be funny. He's not a recruiter type, is he?
Absolutely not. I'm
He's
shocked.
He'll go on the road, and instead of suit and ties into high school gyms, he'll be wearing a hoodie.
A hoodie, yeah, mumbling to recruit. No.
All right, y'all. We got a super chat here from Thunder Pup, and Thunder Pup says recruiting at Bama. I think he means recruits at Bama. No, Saban loves Sark. What are the chances recruits will now seriously think about playing for Sark? Obviously, talking about Alabama recruits.
Well, what about a tight end? What about a wide receiver? I mean, Texas needs a couple of those guys right now. It could use an Isaiah. How would they look with Niblack and the receiver, the tight end that caught a touchdown against Texas? Kind of made Jaron Thompson and those guys look bad a little bit. How about Isaiah Bond, who caught a touchdown and was a deep threat? Those guys would look good at burnt orange, but they have to go in the portal first. And I think that's what our next step is, right? Is to monitor if anybody goes in the portal before Alabama names a new head coach. Like in some ways, this is the anti-Nick Saban move. Like he wants all his ducks in a row. How does he not already know who's the next head coach? Like that's the one thing that, Rod, you mentioned earlier, that is there something kind of messed up going on here because he was interviewing coaches just yesterday and today for the vacant positions?
Yeah.
That is unlike Nick Saban not to have every I dotted and every T crossed.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And, I wonder how much input Nick Saban wants to have or will have in hiring the next head coach, right? Is he concerned with his legacy overall, or does he want to be involved with the program, or is he going to be, no, I'm done. I'm not going to be around the program at all. I'm going to leave it up to whoever they hire. And will they ask Nick Saban his opinion about who replaces him as head coach? These are all questions I have no idea, and only Nick Saban can answer. But I agree with you. Nick Saban's a pretty buttoned up, organized guy, detailed, oriented down to the T. That report about him interviewing coaches, maybe that's just him being a type A guy, and no matter what, he's a task-oriented coach until he ain't, right? It's like people said about that Jim Harbaugh was talking about spring football after they won a national title, and people were like, well, if he's talking about spring football, he must be coming back to Michigan. Not necessarily. That guy's a task-oriented guy until he's got another task. And his task right now is head football coach at Michigan, and he can switch like that as soon as he becomes head football coach somewhere else, and boom, he become a task-oriented guy for something else. So I think for Nick Saban, who's usually very task-oriented, detailed-oriented, it does seem abrupt, and it does seem out of nowhere. But I will say, maybe it was you, Bobby, that brought up the Paul Feinbaum report. Remember, Paul Feinbaum threw it out there a couple of weeks ago, actually, that he thought Nick Saban might retire after this year. I don't know if he had heard something or if that was just him, having the experience of being around the SEC and hearing rumors, or just a gut feeling. But he said he thought Nick Saban might retire after this year. He said it a couple of weeks ago, actually. Yeah,
Paul Feinbaum is about he's got 50 years experience of working in the SEC and in the state of Alabama. He knows people who know people who know people. And so you never know where he gets his news or information from. And it's a wide cast of people. Look, I agree. And it's crazy. What were the odds again on the most likely was Dan Lanning? Is that the most likely on the odds? Dan Lanning was 1, 2 was Dabo Swinney, 3 Mike Norvell, according to Vegas. Those were the top 3. Did y'all have any of those not fit to y'all? Like the one that doesn't fit to me is Lane Kiffin. I mean, Saban fired him, told him to leave.
I think it does fit.
You think he does fit? Why is that?
No, I just do. I mean, he seems infatuated with Alabama. Seems like Alabama, even though he's an opposing coach, the fans love him. I can see him coaching there, Bobby. I really can. And he's +700 for a reason. I mean, that's what top. That's 5th out of those. I can see it. I don't see Deion Sanders
Yeah,
on that list.
that's fair. That's a good one. I don't understand the Deion Sanders one. Just it doesn't feel like it. It doesn't feel like it's a natural fit. But I will say I didn't think Brian Kelly felt like a natural fit at LSU. If you're a good ball coach, bringing in talent, he won games. So you don't always have to be a right fit, but it does help to entrench yourself in the community around you if you kind of naturally fit in with the fan base and the culture.
Hey, here's a question. Mike Norvell and his situation at Florida State. Talk about that, because here's a team, here's a coach that just won 13 games and didn't get in the playoffs. And he's stuck in a league where they're going to have to pay $500 million to try to get out. Allegedly, but they're going to try to find a way around that. Is he attracted by the opportunity to go to Alabama?
That's exactly where my mind was going. You're looking at a list of guys, aside from Deion and Vrabel, who are not in the big. The only one who's not in the Big Ten or the SEC, under a plus 1,000 odds right now is Mike Norvell. So a guy who
Dabo's in the ACC too.
Fair, yes. Disregard. But
he's also an alum. Dabo's an alum.
Yeah. Dabo's dangerous though. Dabo's dangerous because Dabo has openly, vehemently come out against the transfer portal and NIL. Yep. He's dragging his feet on these things, and he seems to be reluctant to evolve with the times. And Sark doesn't really like NIL the way it is either, and the transport. He's pretty much said that or implied that. But he's also implied, I'm gonna do what I gotta do. All right. I don't necessarily like the new landscape, but I will be effective and I will evolve with the times. And Dabo has shown a reluctance to do that. Hell, Nick Saban's complained a little bit about the boosters and the donors not being all in the NIL space with Bama. If he goes there with that attitude, with boosters and donors already being a little lackadaisical and lazy when it comes to NIL, man, that could be disastrous. I hope the leadership at Alabama understands that.
Okay, guys, let's do this super chat from Arched Horns. With Texas being right up against the 85 scholarship limit, are we even able to benefit from Bama's attrition?
You only have to hit the 85 when you're playing games. So you can go over because people graduate, et cetera, throughout the year, and the NCAA understands that. And there will be some additional attrition at Texas over the next 3 to 6 months. So we'll see how that goes. But I think that my take on it is Texas is still definitely out there looking right now for a wide receiver. We've talked about CJ Daniels. They're also looking for a defensive tackle. We talked about Jamari Caldwell. Tight end is another one that they're still going to look at. So you add all those things together, and yes, they're still looking. And yes, they would have space for certain guys from Alabama.
We'll take this question from Jay. And Jay says, is Saban retiring from coaching, or is he simply leaving Alabama? Will there be a possibility of Nick entering the NFL? Or maybe eventually, do you think you could see him like in a Gary Patterson role? I'm not saying at Texas, but just somewhere helping somebody. Do you think we'll ever see him help in any form or fashion when it comes to football ever again?
Kirk Herbstreit and Chris Fowler and those guys. I mean, he'll make $10 million a year probably from ESPN, guys.
As an analyst. Yeah.
He's got that Allstate gig too. He's lighting up the commercial game.
I forgot about that.
He's doing all right.
Doesn't he have some car dealerships and stuff too?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
A ton.
Yeah. Nick Saban, he's doing just fine. He's doing just fine.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to be looking to help somebody unless he helps Bill Belichick on, to do something.
That's interesting now. No, seriously, if you're Nick Saban, the NFL thing is interesting. Now he's 72 years old, so I don't think it's a remote possibility. I don't necessarily think it's something he's interested in. But I mean, who knows? He might. Maybe some team will at least inquire or reach out to him like, hey, Nick, are you thinking about coaching? Because if not, if you are, hey man, we can come up to the NFL and give it another shot. Because he talks often about where he went wrong in the league. He brings it up a lot actually in interviews, and basically ends up saying, I left the league because I couldn't get my quarterback. I wanted Drew the Drew Brees thing didn't work out. That's the guy we wanted. Didn't work out. I didn't get my quarterback, and it all went down here from there. So I'm not saying he's going to do it. He's too old really to consider it. But I think it's something that still bothers him a little bit that it didn't work out. And it was disastrous for him, guys. I mean, the players hated him. Players want to fight Nick Saban in the league. There are multiple reports about players wanting to fight him, fist fight with Nick Saban.
Yeah, he has no problem. He has no problem telling people how he feels, and I think that doesn't always work with grown men. Yelling at them doesn't necessarily work. Where you can suspend their scholarship, you're not going to suspend their paycheck.
True that.
A little bit of that. I think Saban's got a lot of stuff going on, and I will say that the initial report is that he's retiring. So he's not that's the report. So that would mean he's not going or looking for the NFL. He might be retiring from coaching, hence the idea of working for an ESPN or whoever might come along. All right, guys, we've done enough on this tonight. A shockwave really that reverberates around college football. Not only Nick Saban announcing that he is retiring, but we've also been covering Bo Davis and his move to LSU, the Texas defensive line coach, as well. A lot of stuff going on today. On a nondescript day in the middle of January, wow. 9 days away from the college football playoff, Texas played. Who would have thought we'd be sitting here and this kind of news would be breaking on a mid-afternoon in January? But big stuff for college football.
All right, guys, before we get out of here, I'm going to put y'all on the spot. Call your shot. Who's the next coach at Bama?
Oh, that's good.
I'm going Dabo. I'm going Dabo. Mama called. Bear Bryant had the best quote, right? Why did he leave A&M? Mama called. That's when he went back to Alabama. Mama's going to call Dabo.
I like Dan Lanning. I think Dan Lanning has the youth, the charisma, the recruiting skins on the wall. He's obviously put Oregon in a very good spot that values trench play above everything else. I think Alabama under Dan Lanning could maintain this level of performance for a pretty long time.
I'll go to sleeper then. I'll go with Mike Norvell. I like that pick. CJ brought him up earlier. That's a good one. And I do think he's willing to jump because he's upset with the way this season went down. And the ACC it's a powder keg right now. And I think he'd rather get to a more stable situation. Mike Norvell's a hell of a coach, actually, too. So I'll take that one. Easy buyout, too. Easy buyout.
Yeah, there you go. All right. Well, and those all three have the three best odds there in Vegas. So we'll see what happens. And it's going to be an interesting situation to watch unfold, no doubt about that. Well, we want to thank all of you for tuning in. Be sure to like and subscribe. Definitely subscribe and ring the bell because, I mean, no telling what's going to happen next at any given moment. Today being a perfect example of that. But if you ring that bell, you'll be notified anytime we go live or that we post a video right here on Texas Football. So for CJ, Rod, and Bobby, I'm Blake Monroe, and we'll see you next time.
Hook 'em.
Hook 'em.